Fox News alert right now. The IDF releasing this video of the Gaza tunnel where they found 6 hostages that were executed by Hamas. The same terrorists Israel is now being pressured to make a deal with. At issue, the Philadelphia corridor along the Gaza-Egypt border. You're seeing the map. Hamas's lifeline to smuggle weapons for nearly the last 2 decades through its maze of tunnels underneath. They say those tunnels go about 500 square miles through Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu joins us live from Jerusalem right now. Mr. Prime Minister, thanks so much for your time. Jerusalem Post is reporting that you're 90% there in negotiations with Hamas towards a ceasefire deal. Would you say that's accurate?
No, it's exactly inaccurate. There's a story, a narrative out there that there's a deal out there. In fact, while we agreed in July and in May and July and in August to a deal and to an American proposal, Hamas has consistently said no to every one of them. They don't agree to anything. Not to the Philadelphia corridor, not to the keys of exchanging hostages for jail terrorists, not to anything. So that's just a false narrative. They just want us out of Gaza so they can retake Gaza and do as they vowed to do, the November 7th massacre, again, the butchery, again and again and again. And you saw how horrible this butchery is the other day when they murdered in cold blood 6 of our hostages. So to ask Israel to make concessions after this murder is to send a message to Hamas: murder more hostages, you'll get more concessions. That's the wrong thing to do. And I think the Israeli public overwhelmingly is united against that.
It looks like the hostages, the condition, they were famished. They were starving to death in those tunnels. What else can you tell us about the condition of those 6?
It's a horrible thing. You know, Brian, I visited the families. One of the families, I talked to some others. They're broken. You know, we had worked so hard to get them out. I made a deal a few months ago where we got more than half of our hostages out and more than half of the living hostages out. And we're doing everything we can to get the remainder. But Hamas consistently refuses to make a deal. So it's not true. No, the report that there's a deal out there, that the only thing holding it up is the Philadelphia tunnel, is not merely not true. It's just a direct falsehood. What we have to do is to make sure that we do 2 things. 1, get the hostages out. That's why I'm wearing this yellow pin. And second, keep the red lines that are necessary for Israel's security and survival. And I think both of them go through holding the Philadelphia corridor, because that presses Hamas. That prevents them from rearming. It prevents Gaza from becoming this Iranian terror enclave again, which can threaten our existence. But it's also the way to prevent them from smuggling hostages that they keep through the ceasefire into Egypt, into the Sinai, where they could disappear, and then they'll end up in Iran or in Yemen, and they're lost forever. So if you want to release the hostages, and you want to make sure that Gaza doesn't pose a threat to Israel again, you've got to keep the Philadelphia corridor, which is the entry gate of Iran to Gaza, firmly in Israel's hands, and that's what we're really doing right now.
And you found huge tunnels there that allowed the Hamas to be resupplied, and that's why you want to hold it. But your defense minister reportedly says you don't need to hold it as part of these negotiations. Defense Minister Gallant. Number 1, is that true, and what do you say to him?
Well, no, he didn't say. He said that we could leave and come back after 42 days. Number 1, it doesn't solve the problem of once we leave and we're not physically there, that they could smuggle remaining hostages out. And the only way we can prevent that is actually by being there. And secondly, you know, we had a discussion in the cabinet about this, and we're a country with an army and not an army with a country. And overwhelmingly, the cabinet voted to stay there, for the simple reason that once we leave, there'll be enormous pressure on us not to go back in. When we left Gaza the first time in 2005, people said, you know, the first time they fire a rocket, you can come back in there. It's been 20 years and we didn't come back in. And we've had this in other fronts as well. We know that when we're there, that we don't have to go back in and pay an exorbitant price, and God knows how many lives would be lost. So I think the cabinet made a firm decision. The people of Israel overwhelmingly are there. It's a democracy. People can protest, but the public is solidly behind the position that the cabinet took. We stay in there. We keep working for a deal. We keep working for something that will release our hostages. And we just have to do both things at once. We have to keep the pressure on Hamas. And when we hold Philadelphia, we're really holding them by the choke point. And the second thing is we keep trying to get our hostages out. I'm committed to that with every fiber of my being.
Mr. Prime Minister, NBC has a report today that American hostage family, and there's 4 remaining, are pressing President Biden's administration to make a deal with Hamas and just go through you, that doesn't include Israel. Have you heard that? Is this true? Would you allow that?
I don't know. Look, I don't judge the families. I mean, they're going through enormous anguish. And some of them went through this horrible anguish of worrying about the fate of their loved ones to grieving about those that were murdered in cold blood. I lost my own brother in the rescue of hostages when he led the rescue mission at Entebbe. I myself was wounded in a hostage rescue operation. I can understand their anguish, so I'm not judging them. But I think we have a responsibility both to get the hostages out, but also to prevent Gaza from becoming the terror enclave again. And ultimately, Israel is a democracy, and the government decides how to balance these two needs, and that's what we're doing. It's a tough thing,
Prime Minister,
but that's what we're doing right now.
I can't imagine tougher, and no one's got a tougher job right now than you. How much harder was your job made when President Biden came out and said that you could be doing more towards a ceasefire and a resolution?
Well, I don't know what the president meant by that. You have to ask him, but I'll give you the facts. In July, we put forward a proposal that Secretary Blinken called extraordinarily generous. In August, we accepted an American proposal, a U.S.-backed proposal. Hamas refused. Just in August 16th, there was a final bridging proposal, which we also accepted. Hamas refused. 3 days ago, the Sinwar's deputy, the deputy of Hamas's chief, said that they don't want any deal. They just want Israel out. They don't care for any of these conditions. Israel has to leave. They have to take over the Gaza Strip. And you know that they vowed to do October 7th massacre again and again and again, where they butchered our people, raped our women, murdered them, beheaded our men, burnt babies alive, and took hostages. We're not going to let that happen again. So Hamas is not there with a deal. There's not a deal in the making, unfortunately.
And it's
that
not
still
close.
Hasn't happened. They want to reconstitute their terror kingdom, and unfortunately it's not close. But we'll do everything we can to get them to the point where they do make a deal, and at the same time we prevent Iran from resupplying Gaza as this great terror enclave right next to Tel Aviv, right next to our major cities.
Mr. Prime Minister, what do you say to critics who say that you're extending this conflict in order to stay in power, that it's for your political gain for this to go on? What's your reaction to that?
I'm not interested in my political future. I'm interested in my country's future. This war would be over yesterday if Hamas laid down its arms, released all the hostages. It'll be over in 2 seconds. But Hamas is refusing to do that. The obstacle to the end of this war is Hamas. The obstacle to the release of hostages is Hamas. The ones who butchered and are slaying, murdering 6 people in cold blood, riddling them with bullets and then firing bullets into their heads is Hamas. It's not Israel. It's not me. We'll do everything we can to fight these savages. And it's a savagery that not only endangers Israel, it endangers all democracies. And if we come to the point where, and look, I have red lines. They were set before this massacre, this latest murder, but they become redder. I have areas of flexibility. I've given them to my negotiating team, and I stand by them. But now, to go and make concessions after these murders, it's a license to kill hostages. That's what Hamas will understand. Kill hostages, get concessions. That's just wrong. It's not the right way to do it. And you know, governments and leaders have a responsibility to do the right thing. Your heart goes out. And I certainly, my heart was shattered. Our hearts were torn when we saw this. But we also have the responsibility of judgment to do what is important to secure the future of the country. We can't let Iran resupply the terrorists in Gaza. And at the same time, we have to continue to put the pressure on Hamas. That's where the pressure should be directed. So in any case, these are the facts. Israel agreed to a deal. Hamas has refused. It's still refusing to budge. And the pressure should be put on Hamas, not on Israel.
Right. And you, again, to reiterate, a deal is not close. Mr. Prime Minister, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.